In this video, I would be explaining to you the concept relating to a journal. Now, what happens is that many a times this journal is also called as the book of original entry. Now, many a times, let's say you went to XYZ and company and he bought a computer for, let's say, 20,000. So what you get is, you get an invoice from XYZ, right? Once you do a particular transaction, this invoice is called the source document. Why? Because this acts as a source of a particular transaction that has happened. Now in this case, what can happen is that you have to record this transaction in your books of accounts. So a journal is the book of original entry, and it looks something like this. So the first column is the date. So what happens is, let's say this transaction happened on 1/1/2011. So you would enter 1/1/2011 as the date. So the transactions are basically entered in a chronological order. So what will happen is, you would start entering these transactions. So whichever transaction happens first appears first. Then you have a particulars column. Particulars column basically captures what all accounts are affected. There is a LF column, or the ledger folio. So this indicates on what page of the ledger is this particular account posted. You have a debit amount and you have a credit amount. Let's see this account. So when you purchased a computer, and let's say you purchased it for cash. In one of the previous videos, you've learned about the rules of debit and credit for assets, expenses, losses, liabilities, and capital, right? So what happens here is, what are the two accounts which are affected? One is the computer account. Okay. Or let me not put this thing here. And the other is cash account. I'll suggest that every time you do an entry, you should kind of visit the rules of debit and credit in your mind. Now computer is what? Computer is an asset account. Cash is what? Cash is also an asset account. So what was the rule for the asset account? Do you remember? The rule for the asset account was that any increase in the asset is debited and any decrease in the asset account is credited. So let's go to our account. Computer is an asset. What is happening? Let's say this is the books of ABC. From ABC's perspective, they are receiving a computer. So when you receive an asset, that means it is an increase in your asset. And if an asset is increased, what do we say? The asset is debited. So we write computer account debited. DR stands for debited. How much? The value is 20,000. So whatever account is debited, you write computer account debited. Then cash. Cash is also an asset. What was the rule of accounting? What is happening to cash? Cash is going out. You are paying cash. So cash is decreasing. And what was the rule of accounting? A decrease in an asset is credited. So in your case, cash has to be credited. The way you write this in your ledger folio is you write to cash. So instead of writing a credit here like this, what we do is we write this as computer account debited to cash. To cash means cash has been credited, and therefore you write it in the credit column. Right? Similarly, you keep on putting in other transactions in this account. Now, once you've done this entry, what you also do is that most of the time people normally put in a small explanation below this saying being, and what is this? This is just a narration so that tomorrow when I revisit this account, in business there can be hundreds and hundreds of transactions or thousands of transactions. So when I see this, I may not remember as to what exactly was this transaction. So I put in a small narration here, being a new computer purchased. And if suppose this was purchased for, let's say, A, you write for A. So next time when I open the journal book and I look at this computer, I would know that A bought a computer on 1/1/2011. Okay? So this is basically a journal. So similarly, you can keep on marking all other transactions. Now journal also has its own this thing. So what happens is once a particular page in a journal is completed, you do the total of both the debits and the credits. Let's say there were other transactions where total debit was this and credit was this. So once, and I'm taking this as a total of all these transactions. So you do a total of debit, you do a total of credit, and you write here to balance carried forward. Carried forward it is written as CF, carried forward. Where carried forward? Carried forward to the next page. Okay? So that's how you basically make a journal. Now I will be taking separate videos wherein I will be explaining categorizing certain types of entries and putting them in different journals.